Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. Tens of thousands of protesters have taken to the streets in Germany, Britain and other European countries to demand an end to the coronavirus restrictions. But governments in many countries are seeking to tighten, not ease lockdowns, as the numbers of deaths and cases rise. The largest demonstration was in Kassel in Germany, where Chancellor Angela Merkel is considering reimposing a lockdown. Damien McGuinness reports.
Today's protests in Kassel were the largest anti-restrictions demos Germany has seen so far this year. Some demonstrators were ordinary people who disagree with the government's approach, but there were also far-right groups, anti-vaccination campaigners and so-called COVID deniers there. Similar protests have been held elsewhere in Europe, including in London, Amsterdam and Vienna. They all illustrate a growing weariness about ongoing lockdown measures. But across Europe, there's also frustration that the vaccine rollout is so slow, adding to a growing sense in some countries that governments are losing control.
One of the murdered Maltese journalists, Daphne Caruana Galizia's prime targets, Keith Schembri, has pleaded not guilty to charges of corruption, money laundering and fraud. Mr Schembri was among 11 people formally charged at a hearing in the capital, Valletta. Here's Mike Sanders.
Daphne Caruana Galizia's investigative reporting shook Malta to the core. Much of it focused on Keith Schembri. He denies any wrongdoing, but the intense scrutiny he was put under led to the resignation in January last year of his boss, the Prime Minister Joseph Muscat, even though he was not directly implicated. The current hearing involves the bribes Mr Schembri allegedly paid the former boss of a newspaper group, but it won't shed any light on Miss Caruana Galizia's murder with a car bomb in 2017. A hitman who pleaded guilty last month is starting a 15-year sentence.
Chile has recorded its highest daily number of new coronavirus infections, the latest South American country to be swamped by a resurgence of COVID. Almost all hospital beds in the country are occupied, and the capital, Santiago, has been placed into lockdown this weekend. Chile has one of the most advanced vaccination campaigns in the world. The International Monetary Fund says there are signs that a global economic recovery is underway, but warns there is a growing divergence between advanced and emerging economies. The IMF's first deputy managing director, Jeffrey Okamoto, said the recent United States stimulus would prompt the IMF to update its global growth forecast, but he warned the pandemic had pushed 90 million people into extreme poverty. Thousands of Israelis have been demonstrating outside the residence of the Israeli Prime Minister days before the country's fourth general election in 2 years. Benjamin Netanyahu is facing corruption charges, which he denies. Vigils have been held outside the house every Saturday since last June. BBC News. Hundreds of Americans have gathered outside the Georgia state capitol in Atlanta in support of the Asian American community. The demonstration comes 4 days after the shootings of 6 Asian women at local massage parlours and a day after President Biden visited the city to encourage Americans to stand together against hate. The man charged with the murders has told police that an addiction to sex led him to violence. The new leader of Canada's main opposition party has failed in his bid to change its stance on climate change, a key issue in the last election campaign. Conservative Party members on Saturday voted down a proposal to recognise climate change as real. A special court in the Pakistani city of Lahore has sentenced 2 men to death for a gang rape, which sparked public outrage last year. The pair came across a French woman and her children stranded on a highway near Lahore after running out of petrol. They raped the woman in front of her children. Japan has decided to ban people from overseas from travelling to Tokyo to watch this year's summer's Olympic and Paralympic Games because of coronavirus. The International Olympic Committee said it was disappointed with the decision, but safety had to be the first priority. Alex Capstick reports.
Tokyo is currently under a state of emergency, and the organisers have always insisted their priority was to make the event as safe and secure as possible. It's understood around 1 million tickets have been sold overseas. Refunds will be available. However, costs for cancelled hotel bookings will not be covered by the local organising committee. Volunteers from abroad have also been barred. Having no international spectators will be a blow to the Japanese tourism industry, which would normally expect big revenues during an Olympics and Paralympics. A ruling on the number of domestic fans allowed to attend is expected next month.
Alex Capstick reporting. That's the latest world news from the BBC.